A Java with John, a Java with John. Grab a cup of Java and sit on down and have some Java with John. Hello, my name is John, and this is my Java. So welcome to another episode of Java with John. I'm talking a bit lower just because it's probably about 4:30, quarter to 5 in the morning, so thought it'd be nice to tape on a quiet night in the big city, and let's see what sounds disturb us. Anyways, I want to talk about a couple of comments from my last video. Again, people liked my opening, my first experimentation with text, but I've been playing a little bit with video editing, so I'm gonna throw a couple of other things, splice up the intro on this video a little bit, and a couple other things. So hopefully you enjoy evolving with me, not only from the show point of view, but from even the editing and just kind of seeing how things are fitting together. I was also having a conversation with a friend tonight, and they were talking about, they had just watched the video and they had lots of questions about what their boss was. And it's quite interesting. To make a long story short, and just because I don't want to breach any kind of confidentiality, sometimes people don't know what they're good at. Sometimes people aren't good at anything. Sometimes people aren't willing to take feedback on what they're good at and what they need improvement on. Sometimes people aren't willing to give feedback. Sometimes people are afraid to give feedback. Like, there's so many interesting things that came from that conversation, and not necessarily because it was communicated, but my brain, I love this stuff, so my brain was going 100 miles a minute after we talked. So it was a good conversation. But what I want to talk to anybody in a leader, actually anybody, be open to feedback. Right now I'm holding my coffee because I'm outside here, but I really want to emphasize is be open to feedback. Because you can't learn and you can't grow if you're not open to feedback. And I'm gonna actually do a episode of Java with John sometime in the future, I promise, before the summer is out, on giving and receiving feedback. But now I want to talk about the role of a leader within our leadership position. So leadership, it sounds all good, right? But again, like I said, there's also the supervisor role, there's also the manager role. But tonight, or early this morning, or this week, or whenever you're watching it, I want to focus on the leader part of a leadership position. There's a fellow, I believe his name was Stephen Covey, who wrote a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And if I remember correctly, I think it was number 5 that talks about the difference between leadership and management. Now I break it down because I really believe there's distinctions between, you have to have the supervisor as well. The supervisor is very distinct from the leader, very distinct from the manager. Although it's quite fascinating, because I actually think the supervisor, if you were to have a triangle, the supervisor would be in the middle, actually, because I think there's some crossover from leader to supervisor. There's some crossover. Well, there's some crossover from everything, but I think there's a lot of crossover between supervisor, leader, supervisor, manager. Again, there's crossover from manager, leader as well. Don't get me wrong, but I think that the supervisor is almost in the middle. The role of a supervisor is almost in the middle. So, and again, role of a leader, role of a supervisor, role of a manager. 3 distinct roles, but it's all combined into that leadership position. So, yeah. So, so anyways, he talks about, again, it's been a while since I read the book, and I just thought about discussing this now. So, but he talks about when when a group of people are kind of making their way through the forest, and there's the person in front who's kind of chopping away at the branches and this and that, and they're going up in the tree every so often and looking around and trying to find their way out of the forest, and they're coming down and they're chopping some more. They're the ones who are providing the direction, leadership, all that stuff. Those are the leaders. Those are the leaders. And again, he talks about managers being the people who, get the supplies, make sure the machetes are sharpened, make sure the people are fed, make sure people are sleeping properly, making sure that there's training to use the machetes. Those are the managers. Again, supervisors somewhere in the middle. But again, a distinct third role. So again, leader. So what kind of qualities, what kind of role does a leader play? Or what kind of role? So the leader is the visionary. Right, the visionary, the one who provides direction. Whether you're a leader, you have, say, for example, 3 other people in your school group. It's perhaps, let's say, science project, because there's lots of groups in science, and someone just tends to step up to the plate and take on the leadership role. They're the ones who are going to have the vision. They're the ones who are going to provide the direction. Because if you have 4 people and there's no distinct leader, it's going to be chaos. Right? It's in people's best interest, even in those small situations, to have a leader. The organization I work for, and many other organizations actually in the child and youth care field, have programs, but there's a lot of distinct roles in those programs. So people take on leadership positions, say in the area of recreation, medication, student supervisor, what have you. There's probably in my organization, there might be the organization I used to work for, there might be some distinct things. In other organizations, there might be roles I never heard of before. So, but the common, again, I know rec and meds are pretty common roles. Actually, student supervisor, another common role throughout a lot of the child and youth care organizations within Edmonton, probably within the province, probably within the country, whatever it is, right? But so they are people taking on leadership positions, but if they don't provide leadership, if they're, for example, let's say med rep, right? They're in charge of medication, they're in charge of making sure that the processes are followed, etc., etc. If they don't provide leadership in that area, if they don't provide direction, if they don't provide a clear goal for people, like give meds properly, simple enough goal, you would think, then there's going to be chaos, and that task, that situation won't be carried out properly. So the leaders got to have a vision, they got to have an objective, they got to have a purpose, and the purpose has to be embraced by the people that are leading. So this is the other tough one. It's got to be embraced by the people that they're leading. Getting my coffee, my apologies. Off to the side, should get myself a little table next to me. So, yeah, sometimes people don't embrace what the leader has to offer. Sometimes in school projects, there's a lot of discussion on, say, science project, if it was a science fair, and a group of people got together and they got to create something sciencey. I don't know, I even using science because I don't like science anyways, but came to mind. So they got to do something sciencey, like maybe they got to, do something sciencey. Sorry. Say, for example, they have to demonstrate how the solar system works. Let's use that for an example. And they have different ways and different views of how that should be done. If the leader doesn't take charge and isn't able to communicate what the group wants, but in the end B, what was decided in a clear, concise way, in a continuous way, the group's going to fall apart. Just like a leader of an organization, if they don't understand and embrace the philosophy, if they don't teach others that within the organization to embrace the philosophy, and if there's not systems in place for that philosophy to be embraced, then no one's going to follow the leader, right? The game, follow the leader, right? Or Simon Says, right? Or if Simon had a son, it would be Simon's son says, right? So, yeah. Anyways, then the things are going to go to hell in a handbasket, basically. So the leader's got to have vision, leader's got to have direction, and the leader's got to be able to communicate, embrace that direction. So what else does a leader need? Actually, a leader needs, I touched upon it just last sentence, needs good communication skills. The leader needs to be able to communicate that direction to whoever he or she is leading, because if they don't, then even if it's a good philosophy, even if it's a good mandate, a good mission, whatever you want to call it, then people are less likely to follow them. So there's going to be the people that are going to follow just for the sake of having a job and following and doing what they're told, but they're still not going to have direction. They're not going to even understand what they're doing, and things will fall apart. What else? A leader needs to be charismatic. A leader, I don't even know how to define charisma, but I used to play a game, they define charisma as good looking, but it's more than just good looking. It's that charm, I guess, charisma. It's having the charm, being able to engage people, being able to talk to people like they're the only person in the room, even if it's within a crowd of people. They need to be able to speak to someone's, I call, spirit. Those are the best leaders, is if they can speak to someone's spirit, if they can speak to someone's values, if they can speak to someone's ethics, if they can speak to someone's needs. Again, and remember in the Conflict Management video, talked about needs. If they can speak to someone's needs, that is a great leader. And that goes on to the next thing, motivation. If a leader can speak to someone's needs, then they can motivate people much more readily and much easier. Now, for some people, it's money. Some people, you know what? You have a job here, you do what you need to do, and people are happy with that, right? Some people, it might be they have that need to belong, and the leader makes them feel like they belong and they have a say of what's happening in that agency, organization, or that 4-man science group working on the solar system, right? Everybody wants to get an A on their school projects, and if that leader can convince them, if you go my way, if you go the way of the group, you're going to get that A, then people are more likely to fall in line and follow the leader. So, yeah, motivation. Another important quality of a leader is not only are they good leading within the group, but they're a good representation outside the group. I use those words because, again, thinking back to the science project, right? Sometimes leaders have to ask teachers questions, and they need to be able to represent the group well in terms of getting the proper answers for those questions. If they don't know how to ask their questions properly, if they're going to the teachers to complain about the group all the time, not only does it make the group look bad, it makes the leader look bad because they don't know how to lead. In an organization, in for-profit organizations, you have leaders going to investors. If the leader of the organization or the leader that's selected to negotiate these contracts, these deals with the investors, if they can't present themselves well, they're not going to get those contracts. I love to watch Shark Tank, for example, and there's classics. There's good ideas. Some people have good ideas, but they can't present them well. They can't sell themselves. Leaders have to be good salesmen, right? They have to be able to sell, right? They have to be able to show that confidence internally when they're dealing with people and externally when they're dealing with outside forces, right? They're called, when they're dealing with, I think a lot of people refer to them as stakeholders. So when they're dealing with stakeholders, they have to show that confidence. Regardless of how they're feeling inside, they need to be able to show that confidence. And if there's internal strife within the, say, organization or group of people, then they go back and they deal with that internal strife at a separate time. So, and if your leaders can't excuse me, if your leaders can't communicate very well externally, that only doesn't reflect on them, it reflects on the whole group. Right? And I can speak from personal experience. I'm a very passionate person. When I was a team leader of a program, we'd have these supervisory meetings, and when I go to them, we'd have conversations, and I was very straightforward on how I thought. I was very, some people said reactive, but I was very passionate. I had, and one person even pointed out, one of my supervisors pointed out, she said, you know what, John, even if I don't agree with what you say, I always know that you have a solid reason behind your thinking. You always have a solid reason behind what you're saying. And that's never in question. And I really appreciate that, because she is actually able to see that and acknowledge that. Some other supervisors weren't as good at doing that. They would label it other ways, because they label, I think that my favorite one was reactive, and sometimes I was, but a lot of times I wasn't, but they call me reactive so that they could discount it. But again, that only didn't reflect on me, that reflected on the people I led, the people within the program. And when I realized that, I shifted the way I did things a little bit. I shifted and learned to be a little bit diplomatic. That's something I'll be learning for the rest of my life, in all honesty. But I learned to temper myself, because I knew that not only was I representing myself, I was representing the group of people that I led. So leaders need to remember that, whether it's, again, you're at a supervisor meeting, again, right? Perhaps agencies, if they have someone in charge of recreation, maybe some agencies have rec meetings, right? Where all the rec people get together and talk about the different programs. Those rep people, even if they're frontline staff, they're still in a leadership position. They have to be able to represent their program, their group home treatment home program, whatever you want to call them, their facility. They need to be able to represent them very well. Because if they don't, that reflects on the person and the program. So those are a few, in the short time we have today, those are a few of the qualities of a good leader. I'm going to summarize a few. Again, I don't want to be repetitious, but I want to summarize to hit these points home. A leader needs to know how to direct. A leader needs to know how to embrace the philosophy objective of the group, and when necessary, create that philosophy and objective of the group. They need to learn how to communicate that philosophy, those objectives, those mission statements to the people that they are leading. A leader needs to not only know how to communicate, but they need to know how to motivate the people they are leading. That's important. And the leader also needs to know not only how to represent the group internally and do all these things internally, they need to know how to represent the group properly externally. So they're just, again, a few of the qualities and what makes a good leader. Now, my next show, I will promise, because I know a couple shows ago I did conflict and I kind of veered away from that. So I want to make a commitment that my next show will be on the role of a supervisor within a leadership position. Because I want to finish this set of 3, and I think, or I guess it'll be, when said and done, a set of four talks. And I might do a 5th one. I have some ideas rolling around, but for sure, next week will be the role of a supervisor within a leadership position. And then the last one will be the role of a manager within a leadership position. So those will be the next 2 weeks, and I promise you. People might be asking, John, what do you fit in on this? I gotta tell you, if I had to, out of 100, if I had a pie chart, my leadership would probably be around 40%. My supervisory would probably be around 40%. My managerial would probably be around 20%. And I'm going to talk about that more when we get to the managerial stuff. And as you can tell, I'm very passionate about the leadership portion. You'll hear me next week, the passion about the supervisory portion. Management, again, struggle with more, so it's a little harder for me to be passionate about it, but it is an essential part of being in a leadership position. So I really appreciate everybody listening, and I just want to say to all my broasters with the coasters, zap that like button, and because I like you. And remember, be yourself, because nobody else can.